Welcome to the Wellness on Tap podcast with your host, Dr. Debs Eastwood.
But on to more positive things. It's a really good way to start the conversation, but wow, yeah, we've got it off his chest now.
That's it.
We're feeling better. So we bumped into each other again at the expo. Is it 3 weeks ago now? 2 weeks? Something like that. Something like that. In Derby.
Yes.
And I think I'd alluded to you before that I'd like you to come and give a update on where you were. Ask, yeah. And that sort of solidified it, didn't it?
Absolutely.
We got today sorted.
I'm honoured. Thank you very much.
Oh, my God, you are so welcome. You are so welcome. Because last time you were here, we were just saying was when we'd been at an event, a different type of event, but with the same organiser.
Yes.
For the expo. And you'd met somebody to work alongside with, she was the mentor. I think you're a bit of a mentor as well, quietly. But to work alongside her.
Yes. Yeah.
And I could just feel the energy between you two. I could see it.
Yeah. It was magic. And I would say, I do call them my mentor. They don't like that label. But I feel that they mentor me. But she was able to make me see and make sense of my experience very crudely. And it was a punch in the heart. And I'm quite a composed person, I like to think. And I burst into tears because it hit me right, because it all made sense.
Right.
And there was a lot of, as they highlighted, it was my ego was at play, but not in the way that we often think of ego. It was keeping me small. It wouldn't let me identify with what had happened, the capabilities, because there was an underlying fear of there. It was like, I didn't want to, to turn out to be some crazy woo-woo, blah, blah. Not that I discredit any of that, because the truth is I am. I just didn't want anyone to think I was. I'd spent a long time negating that sort of image. And it was my ego was in the way of allowing me to be what I'd become, to accept that I was a completely different person and that I had a whole different perspective on the world after the near-death experience that I couldn't deny, but I put myself back into doing mode. I need to work this out. What do I need to do with this? I think we talked about last time. And when we did talk last time, I'd gone into the phase of surrender again. I took all the information and again said to the universe, show me. And it did. It did. Super quick, like a conversation would. I remember one particular conversation happened on a Sunday, and then it was about 2 veins of work. And on the Monday, I had confirmation of the one, and Tuesday the next. And I was like, wow. Okay, I'm listening. And there were 2 things that I thought were in opposition with each other. And
Isn't
in actual
that interesting?
fact, and I thought I was stuck in between. But I wasn't stuck. And yes, I was in between, because that was the purpose. That was the calling, if you like, was to bridge.
I see.
2 dualities that we live in.
Yeah.
The polarities of positive, negative, day, night, whatever you want to call them.
Clinical medicine, alternative medicine, in
Exactly.
my case.
Yeah, precisely that.
Yeah.
Because we do exist in this duality, and I know that explicitly from that near-death experience. That's what I was shown. But I still had this humanness that was like, well, am I positioning myself here or here?
Yeah.
And actually it was like, no, you understand what oneness is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And being that bridge between the 2. And I don't mean positive, negative as in right or wrong, just polarities, the doing and the passive, or the doing and the being.
That gives me goosebumps. That was marvellous. So your near-death experience, how many years ago now was that?
7 years.
7 years, okay.
Yeah.
And it's taken you up until about a year ago?
Yeah. Yeah. The first 3 of those were physically recovering,
of course,
and mentally recovering, learning to walk again and so forth. And of course, we had a little thing called lockdown in between there as well.
Gets in the way of a lot of things, that, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah, that, and then when I felt, okay, I'm physically ready to go back to work, I went straight back into entrepreneur mind of, right, what do I do about this? You know, how do I pay off the cancer debt? How do I recover from this? How do I get everything back to where it was? But the point is, where it was isn't for me anymore, because that's not who I am anymore.
No.
So it was, again, the trap of the mind, which, again, this duality, you could argue my mind is one of my strongest traits, but equally that means it's strong enough to work against me as much as it is for me. So we have to...
So you've got to be right in you.
Absolutely.
So that you can use the strongest parts of it in the direction you want it to go.
Same for everybody. Physically, mentally, emotionally, they can work for you or they can work against you. The same as life. Is it working for you or is it working to you? You know, as in the victim, like, oh, everything just happens to me. But when you realise that actually there's an ownership there, when you realise your full being, your full capacity, then you can help align things to things working for you and working with the universe.
Absolutely. And how can we fight something as huge as the universe if we just think about it like that for a second?
Yeah. But this is, again, the trap of the mind language, the linguistics. Fight.
Exactly.
A fight means there's a winner and there's a loser.
Yeah, it does.
And that's the old paradigm. That's what we have to bridge now, is that we are getting closer to oneness, and the duality is not this and that. They're two completely different things. They're either end of a spectrum, which we're coming to realise, you know, in conversations around gender, sexuality, neuroplasticity, etc., neurodiversity. It's all a spectrum.
Yes.
And the best example, day and night. Where does day end and night begin? There's no definitive point because it's a spectrum.
Precisely.
And
Yes.
where do we want to, and we can go to either end of that spectrum, but where do we want to position ourselves for the greater good or the better outcome?
Yeah.
So I think fighting and battle is the old paradigm, which we can very clearly see is desperately trying to keep a hold.
But it is literally by its very nature destructive.
Absolutely. There's, you know, might assert oneself as a winner, but that means there's a loser.
Yeah.
But even in today's narrative, it's like they're both saying winners and losers all the time, and it's like actually the lines are so blurred, it's like you've no idea.
No.
Because the veil of illusion is gone.
Yeah, and it's tragic, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's tragic. Your day and night example, I was thinking, officially society has said sunrise and sunset, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But when you go and watch a sunset, it's not like that, is it?
Not at all. Not at all. Everything is a spectrum.
So even that is...
Yeah. We know light is a spectrum. We've known that for a long time. Sound, there are sounds we can't hear, there are sounds we can. It's all spectrum.
That still blows my mind.
The nature of the universe, right?
You know, colours we can't see and sounds we can't hear.
Yeah.
Just because of the way our bodies are designed.
Absolutely. And I think even with your medical expertise, you know, there's a very fine line between somebody being unconscious because you've put them there for their safety during an operation versus they're gone.
Yeah.
You know, it's a spectrum, isn't it? And you have to get that balance right with your expertise.
Absolutely.
So everything is this, it's not black and white.
No, it isn't, no. And I think that contributes hugely to a lot of the stress of my job because it's something that the second you begin to take that for granted, you become an unsafe practitioner.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and some patients that come through the NHS doors to me are obviously sicker than others. You know, I'm never blasé, but some you can have a lighter touch with than others because they've got really good reserves. They're young, fit and healthy. What you're doing, what's happening to their bodies isn't going to put so much of a stress and a strain on it as what it would some frail, really sick individual.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is, I suppose, the importance, seeing the individual, isn't it, and their circumstances.
Completely.
And that makes a good medical practitioner.
Thank you, my darling.
Yeah.
that's part of the reason that, for me personally, the NHS doesn't hold the attraction that it did at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because even though it does some incredible work, and I would never knock it in its entirety.
No, I wouldn't be here without it.
But, yeah, precisely. But it is so protocolized and big pharma driven and money driven, even within the NHS, even though it's not the same as like an American system that's based on insurance and money more openly.
Yes.
It is. It's still based on money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it doesn't sit as well with me anymore that I have to follow certain paradigms and rules just because they're there.
Yeah. It's a swinging pendulum, isn't it?
Mm.
And you can't, I use the river analogy. It's okay to go to that bank, it's okay to go to that bank, but down the middle is where the water's deepest and where you get to sail with the wind.
Yeah.
But if you spend too much time on one side of the shore and the tide goes out, you're stuck.
Yep.
And I think with your own journey, it's like the pendulum's been in the mainstream medical, and now it's coming the other way because you need that contrast. This is the duality.
Yeah.
And it's the world right now. Look at the paradigm. We've been so far into greed, control, destruction, all of these things. We've got to come back in the other way to balance it out.
It needs softening, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Needs knocking down a peg or two by some way.
Yeah.
So relating this back to your story. So 7 years ago, your experience, 3 years getting yourself physically and mentally.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back in the game now, whatever the game is.
Yeah.
How long did it take you from there then was it in your head right from the beginning that things have now got to be different?
I always knew things had got to be different, but I wasn't fully accepting of that. Because again, I was still thinking in these extremes that I had to be all of this or all of that.
Right.
Rather than being able to slide along that spectrum. You know, could I be a spiritual teacher of sorts or teaching sort of spiritual principles from that perspective and still do psychotherapy and have a foot over there? Or more so, the corporate work that I really enjoy, the mental health training, you know, and I wasn't still thinking that there were these contradictions. I get black and white again, and it isn't at all, because, you know, science and spirituality really are just two different languages for the same thing, and quantum physics is really proving that.
Oh, tell me, go.
So
get in there, get deep.
Oh God, we really go deep, because everything is energy. That's the point, and all energy has a vibration and thus has a frequency. And it's as simple as that if you want to keep it in that box. And it's playing with those frequencies and understanding what's needed. You know, if an individual is stuck in denser frequencies of emotion, then the solution is higher frequencies of emotion, because that's the contrast. So it's always this delicate balance, and it's the corporate work, you know, the mental health, which is very much based on science, what we know about psychology, we're still very much focused on what was broken. Whereas physical health, we preach a lot more about this is how you stay fit and healthy. So mental health has come from the problem now into this is how you improve your mental health, and quite science-based. But that's evolving now, because we know that emotions and mental health are intrinsically connected, because again, it's this sliding scale. Yes. So I was finding that the mental health work I was delivering was evolving more into emotional intelligence type work. And the one-to-one stuff, I had an instinctive knowing that I was no longer to stay in what I call negative change.
Right.
The trauma, focusing on, yes, finding a solution, turning the negative into the positive. But I was continually looking at what was broken. Yeah, very rewarding, being in that field for a long time. But I started to get the words, it's time for positive change. It's time for positive change. Not to fix what's broken, but to create a new way of thinking, feeling, being, etc. so that we evolve. We're at a really pivotal point of our evolution. The world is not going to be the same. We're absolutely not going backwards. This chaos isn't us sliding back. This is the old desperately trying to hold on to what was.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be doing it if it didn't know that it had already lost. They know the new paradigm is here. People more than ever are compassionate and empathizing and standing up for what is right. They're still protesting about things. They're not letting things drop, turning a blind eye anymore. And I don't want to get into all of it. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. But people aren't prepared to let that go anymore. Even the way that we've been pushed into this consumerism. You need this, you need that, and then now we're being told, oh no, you can't have any of that anymore because you need to save the planet, and it's like you were led into that. But people are getting savvier about that. It's an empathy-driven economy. If a corporation isn't behaving itself or doing something wrong, people will no longer spend their money there.
That's very true. Yeah, that has become more apparent, hasn't it?
Because we're becoming more emotionally intelligent, because this is our evolution. We are naturally empathic, caring, compassionate human beings. And we've been divided into these contrasting groups, and that's been the focus. Because, the reality is, if every human being saw another human being, nobody would go to war. They wouldn't harm anybody else because they'd see one of themselves. But instead, they've been taught that they're different, so it's okay to go after them. And that's just not the case.
No, that's the way that, like you say, creates resistance between people, isn't it?
Totally.
Identification of differences, and therefore you cannot communicate with somebody different.
No.
But like you say, we're all made of energy.
Exactly. Take it to the macro.
Yeah, we're all the same. We may well look different on the surface. We may well exhibit different behaviours.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, we work the same.
Yeah. And that's the contrast to be celebrated. Different cultures, different nationalities, different ethnicities.
Yeah.
Celebrate night and day.
Yeah.
That's the point. That's the contrast we live in. That's what it's for. It's the beauty of both.
Yeah.
Not, that's right, this is wrong.
Precisely. Yeah, it's those negative labels that get attached, isn't it?
Absolutely. So it's returning to oneness to some degree. Our consciousness is now no longer accepting what we've been told because we're evolving consciously.
Yeah.
We know this. And I think if you know anybody with smaller children now, they're
different.
Without a doubt. What matters to the younger, it's already, even there's like the huge decrease in teenagers drinking.
Yes.
And I don't want to speak for you, but certainly for me.
Oh, yeah.
I did plenty of it. But like my own kids, they're just not interested, doing it. Not doing it.
No, and the way we were brought up, the behaviours we exhibited, we would never have thought. No. We just thought it was a natural rite of passage as a teenager and in your early 20s.
Yeah. So we can see this consciousness is evolving, and certainly younger gen, that we're looking for different things. We are. This is us waking up. This is why you're moving in the direction you are and giving people the voice to air this. And people wanted to listen to this now. 10 years ago, it might have been quite different.
Yeah.
And certainly a lot earlier than that.
Yeah,
we'd have been shut down.
Yeah, wouldn't have been accepted at all.
No. And this is the thing, though. We have this information at our fingertips now, and it's available. And this is, people are educating themselves. People are waking up to different ways, another way of doing this, a different way of approaching that, and being more conscious about it.
Yeah.
A win-win mentality.
So much better.
Yeah.
So much better. I'm reading a book at the moment. It's either called The Mesmerist or Mesmerism.
Okay.
And it's primarily sets true, supposedly. Certainly some of the location names are true.
Yeah.
Based in early 18th century London.
Yeah, okay.
and a couple of the medics, and it's talking about how University College Hospital and University College London came about, and the spats between the medics and the surgeons for supremacy and who's better, and the introduction of what you and I would call clinical hypnotherapy.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's obviously varied successes, because it don't work on everybody, does it?
No.
You know, I mean, theoretically, you know, anyway.
Yeah.
but
widely accepted as a
widely
modality.
accepted now as a modality, and how that was coming in. And so that was like the fighting, and somebody had to win. And even to the point where they were trying to get rid of the system of, you know, like nepotism.
Yes.
For bringing medics in, you know, people that were absolutely diabolical in terms of their ability to practice, but so-and-so's son, nephew, cousin, whatever. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
The way thought is evolving.
Yes.
And I'm finding it interesting from that perspective, as much as having a bit of an interest, being a medic myself, you know, and a clinical hypnotherapist.
Well, this is the thing, we're seeing things in from a quantum physics perspective. It can be this, or it can be that. It can be this and that, or none of it.
Yeah.
You know, Schrodinger's cat, if you want to go there. But, you know, it can be both. It can be nothing.
Yeah.
And
which is amazing.
This is the thing, though. It's not you're right, I'm wrong.
No.
It's like, actually, we can both hold those polarities, if you want, if you take it to energy.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine. But when we don't balance the polarity, that's when we've got the issue.
Yeah, I agree.
And this is what I think corporations are now facing, because they know people care more than ever, the empathy-driven economy. But we've been sacrificing people in pursuit of profit.
Very much so.
But that's not sustainable.
No.
You know, corporation is a piece of paper. People come along to animate that with its values, its purpose, and in turn makes profit. But one without the other isn't sustainable. And that's the cusp we're on with leadership in corporations now, is understanding that actually we've got to catch up with the people element of this, because it's not sustainable. And people and profit in that corporation equation are of equal value, because one without the other, you've got this imbalance.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, the same with us as human beings. All of one thing and not of the other, you know, doing all the work but never being the thing that led me into that trap. And again, so it's this bringing balance to that. And that's what this, I think, increasing consciousness is trying to do, to see that there are elements of ourselves, particularly as human beings. I call it spiritual, you know, our spirituality. But I don't necessarily mean somebody humming on the side of a mountain. That could be one's connection with nature.
Yeah.
The spirit that they express, the spirit of them is their spirituality. But we haven't really nurtured that. I mean, religion has gone some way to do that, but then we know that there's doctrines and rigidity there. But to bring out the true spirit of it, and this is why people physically, mentally get unwell, because they're not expressing themselves. Yes. They're not discovering what that spirit is. What's the passion? What's the why?
Yeah. And like you mentioned earlier about emotions and mental health, emotions are linked to your physical health as well, aren't they? Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
I know. I mean, I interviewed a lady on here months ago now who had significant emotional changes in her life that she spoke about how she then developed cancer. And once she changed those emotional places that she was sitting in, the cancers disappeared.
Yeah, I would agree with that in my instance as well.
That to me was just such a profound example of something that a lot of people don't want to accept.
No. And I mean, my understanding, I should say, you know, if you look at emotion, energy in motion, if we stop the motion, we cause a blockage.
Yes.
Blockages in any instance aren't good. So whether it's a physical blockage, we know we've got potentially a medical emergency of sort, emotional blockage, again, what happens to that energy? So we stop that motion because everything is in this flow. You know, by medical definition, cancer cells are ones that have gone chaotic, right?
Yeah.
Or manic, or whatever the correct terminology is.
Good enough word.
So if that energy is blocked, what do you think it's doing to those cells? You know, potentially it's putting it into a chaotic state, which then multiplies that frequency.
Yeah.
And, you know, my own experience with cancer, it was in my stomach, in my emotional center on the right-hand side, and I knew instantly it was all the anger, guilt, shame that I'd buried. Because they're measurable on a frequency scale. So, absolutely.
Yeah, shame's one of the lowest.
Our emotional health is,
isn't it?
The silent, invisible element to physical and mental health.
Yeah.
And I think, again, these are all intrinsically connected. It can't be separated. Nothing in this universe is separate. We're no exception. We are made of stardust, can't we? You know, we can follow that back, can't we, to traces of elements and minerals and things that are from all over the universe.
Yes.
So it's that expansion into that consciousness. You know, the universe is expanding, so is our consciousness, because that's another form of energy. If we look at evolution as a science, we've seen the way that animals have evolved certain skills, extremely unique skills.
Yes.
You know, I love a nature program, and I'm watching with my husband the other day, and we're like, how on earth did that learn to do that, to develop, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the consciousness that has evolved.
Precisely.
And we're here now.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
Very much so.
You know, how did that bird, the woodpecker, decide that that was what it needed to do?
Yeah.
I don't know why that example popped into my head, but it did.
No,
that
but
was the one that just landed.
Birds are a beautiful example. But there's so many, I don't know the correct word, but like a whole species of animal, and then there's these little unique elements because of the environment that they live in, that they've developed.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, is it the Galapagos Islands that have got so many unique species that are nowhere else?
Yeah. And I think if we do look a little towards nature, then the answers are there.
Oh, yeah.
And I think,
so much to learn, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I think that's from my personal experience, is that new perspective I brought back is actually all of this, because I see the vastness of that. I see the expansion of that and the evolution of our consciousness.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I was sort of tipped off about, if you like.
No, it's marvellous.
And now it, because it makes sense, even though not necessarily intelligently makes sense for me, because it's not something I've necessarily studied, but there's a knowing, and I'm like, oh, okay, do I know that? Why do I know that?
I just know that I know it.
Yeah, and it comes out. So I feel like that was the big shift with Julianne, my mentor.
Yes.
When I realised that was the thing. I'd come back, I'd survived to be part of that evolution.
Yeah. So having that conversation with her, like you said, was like, you know, a sucker punch to the gut.
Yeah.
A big awakening.
Very much.
So what changes did you see? Are you able to quantify them? Quantifying, that's the wrong word. But, you know what I mean?
No,
label them almost?
No, I just say clarity in that knowing. And my knowing isn't intelligently knowing. It's when it's more to do with head and heart coherence.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, the brain and the heart are going. That frequency fits. Go with it.
Yeah.
And then the intelligent part of mine will go, are you really sure about that? And I'll be like, shut up.
Yeah.
Bring me the evidence. And that's the way I proceed. And like, if I'm in, because again, frequency, once I'm coherent with that frequency, it will reveal itself in some shape, way or form. The same for everybody, really. You know, the universe really doesn't respond to our wants and desires. It responds to the frequencies that we're giving off. So if there is something you want and desire, get the frequency in alignment, then like a magnet, it will pull it straight in.
Which is amazing, isn't it? That whole concept.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of science even now you know, the Hearth Math Institute,
Yes.
which I did some work with them many years ago before any of this happened to me around heart rate variability, for example, and how emotions, when I was studying energy psychology and how that all. So I think now this is part of this evolution. We're understanding that, you know, there's as many neurons in our stomach as there is in the brain, the gut-brain connection that can be researched now, the frequency that's given from the heart. The Heart Math Institute have got endless studies and papers about this now. And when you bring these into coherence, and that's why I think, again, with the evolution of mental health is into the emotional, because it's coming from these centres.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree, because the heart, from just a clinical medicine perspective, is so heavily dependent on electrical activity and frequency. That's just what it does. Our muscles don't contract without frequency being involved, an electrical charge.
Yeah.
So it's just, like you said, cannot be separated, can it?
No.
So what sort of things are you now doing that, you know, through your year spent working with Julianne?
So it's gone off in duality, I would say. So I've started what we're calling an ascension school, which is for people who these words resonate with, those that know that we're on the cusp of evolution, that feel a calling of some description to something more, to want to understand where we're going as a species, and maybe developing a spirituality. But again, not necessarily a spiritual practice that involves meditation or yoga, although I'm all for those.
Yeah.
You know, I do those daily. But finding their meaning, their spirits.
Yeah. Okay.
Finding what makes them tick.
Yeah.
And working with something that Julianne channeled back in 2016, which we refer to as the laws of ascension. And they're elements of lessons or energy to move through as part of the evolution, you know, as we talk about what serves us, what no longer serves us, stepping into the energy of surrender and release, to let go of what no longer serves us, but equally to step forward and look for what does serve us, to be illuminated so that we could follow that.
Yeah.
So I started that as a group, following those laws, and we invoke the frequencies, do a little bit of healing, and study how this shows up for people individually, because they're very much universal laws, but it's about how you embody those individually. So I'd call that my spiritual work, if you like.
Yes.
I've been through it all myself with Julianne, and now I've been, with honour, tasked to take this forward and share further. And that's evolving in itself as well. And again, part of it for me is demystifying that spiritual element.
I think that's really important, because certainly for me, I always used to think spirituality and religion were the same thing.
Yes.
Up until a few years ago, a handful of years ago. And, you know, I can now say, what were you thinking, girl? But that was all the knowledge I had at that time.
But that's how we were given spirituality, was through religion, because they wanted it controlled.
Yes.
Rather than find out for yourself. That's risky, because you might come to your own conclusions. So we'll set the parameters, stay within this. And I think this is where people are now, who are healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, are beginning to think there's just something else. And it's that element of spirituality. I said before, when I was healing, I knew the only way that I would heal, and the way that I've worked with people, is to heal on every level. Physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think when we've studied people who are sick, you know, they say, people use the words, don't they? I've lost my spirit.
Yeah.
You know?
And we are a whole human.
Exactly. And that spirituality is important, however you see that, whether you just simply see Mother Nature as a spirituality. You know, you can, to a degree, still be an atheist and still be spiritual.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Just by acknowledging that there is an infinite force of energy that runs through this universe that turns the seed into the plant, into the tree, etc., and see that spirit, that energy.
Yes.
But without it, we're not quite fulfilled. And I think this is what we're coming into now. We can, to a degree, I mean, I know we've got problems, but the physical, the mental, we can tick. You know, we've come leaps and bounds. Look at physically, we're living longer, we're healthier than ever, etc. Mental health, vastly developed. Emotional, spiritual, this is the new. This is where we're getting into that. Rather than oneness, I'd say more it's a completeness, a wholeness.
I like that. Yeah.
And I think the people that can tick the boxes, whether that's their financial or professional accomplishments or they've overcome their health worries, but they know there's just something else. So I wanted to provide a space where we can demystify it and say, look, you haven't got to take up a yoga practice. You haven't got to do that. You've just got to get into the energy of what makes you tick, the spirit of you, and own that, invoke that, because it's an aspect of ourselves. So no, it's not withheld from anybody. It's we lose the clarity around it because of other things that have been distracting us, that have intentionally distracted us.
Yeah,
you know?
Dimming our awareness of that part of us.
To keep us small.
Yes.
Because when you tick every level, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, etc., you're dangerous to the status quo. Yeah. And we know people, we've seen people in the world without naming that we see as amazing human beings doing amazing things because they tick all of those boxes. They're whole and they're complete.
Yeah.
And then in contrast, you see somebody who's super successful in business, but physically, they haven't got the health.
No.
And that's the true wealth, you know. So it's any of it. Equally, I will argue, if you're all spiritual and you don't bring it back to the physical, you're very detached from this reality. And that's not a healthy place to be either.
No.
You can't be all this or all that. It's
Wholeness.
Absolutely. So for me, it's making spiritual thought, energy very real for people, regardless of who you are, where you come from or what you do. It's not about doctrine or you can't do this or you can't do that. You know, everything in this universe, you know, have reverence for all of it and put your energy and your attention into whatever makes you tick, because you're up in your frequency, you're up in your consciousness. That's going to have huge ripple effects, you know? It's a tipping point, we call it, isn't it? And we're very much on the cusp of that tipping point now. But if you follow the mainstream, you'd think, you know, it's Armageddon time, isn't it? But statistically, the world's a safer place than it's ever been.
Yes.
We're healthier than we've ever been.
Yes.
We're safer than we've ever been. Yeah. Statistically. But that's not the narrative, because if you get in alignment with that, then you start living like that. Like, oh my God, yeah, we are safer, are we? Yeah. And it goes in a direction where you can't be sold shit that you don't need, to put it bluntly. No,
you are not wrong at all. You're not wrong at all. And that is a soapbox that I'm not going to get on right now.
No, you probably shouldn't.
But for me, with the spirituality and the whole, I can look back now and think to all the different facets I've had, if I just look at my career.
Yeah.
And think, well, they were all on their own on paper. Great. You know, they're good achievements by society's standards. But in here...
Yeah.
And I didn't know back then it was the spirituality box I was trying to tick.
Yes, yeah.
Because that wasn't in my awareness. I hadn't woken up back then.
No.
But I knew that I wasn't right where I was and I had to keep moving.
Yeah.
And some people were like, well, why are you starting again? I said, because he's not right.
Yeah. It's expansion, isn't it? It's growth. Yeah. And I think you knew, and I think we do instinctively know there's something more.
Yeah.
But because we can't see it, or we don't necessarily tap into it, we restrict.
Yeah.
You know, in any situation, we can either contract, shrink, or we can expand and grow. And either is neither right nor wrong. Certain situations we need to contract and keep ourselves safe. Other times we need to expand. That, again, the duality that we live in. And I think there comes a point, a lot of people who professionally, they reach everything that they've achieved, wanted to set out to achieve. And then they're like, but there's something else.
Yeah.
Or I don't feel as expanded as or the opposite. I've learned so much that actually that's contracted me because now I'm in this box and I can't do anything outside of it. And that's what I found by leaving conventional psychology and psychotherapy. It's like, oh, well, you can't mix this. And I was like, what? And it was like, I've learned all of it. And then stay in this lane.
Yeah.
And I was like, this doesn't feel like, and
I can't imagine you staying in a lane that somebody's told you to stay
no,
in, Richie.
God, no. No, that's the problem. So it's that expansion. And I think this is evolution. It's our expansion of conscious awareness. And it applies to everything. And one of the issues I sort of had with accepting how things were going was because I enjoy so much going into corporations and doing mental health training. And I was like, I felt like I don't want to stop that. I love being in the training room.
Right.
Possibly more than anything, if I'm honest. I love being in the training room and watching people learn and the dynamics of it. I love it. But equally, this is the same crossroads of evolution for corporations.
Yes.
Particularly, there are a good group of corporations already that are doing good work, looking after their people, making good money, helping humanity, doing it sustainably, and they're thriving.
Yes.
But again, the old paradigm is money at all costs. So that's done. But there are corporations that want to do better, leaders that want to do better. And it's almost, I don't use these words in corporate, so to speak, but it is bringing spirituality to a corporation. Empathy in leadership.
Yeah.
How do we align everybody who works here with a positive outcome that includes profit, that is given back to them, that in turn, work-life balance is nonsense. You can't work 5 days for somebody, keep 2 for yourself and ever find some sort of balance. But the future is work-life integration. How do we work and live and neither detract from the other? Rather than this mentality of, again, win-lose.
Yes, precisely that.
So we overwork and then we suffer physical health issues. Well, if we can integrate work and life, and they're both supporting of each other, and do that consciously with emotional intelligence, leading with empathy, leveling up people and profits, making every employee feel like a stakeholder in an organisation with a shared goal, focus or vision. That's powerful.
Yeah, that is powerful.
I firmly believe in the positive and the negative. Corporations hold the power at the moment. And even forget governments. I think I'll give you my perfect example of this. We all know that energy's gone off the scale, and our very own government was like, let's start giving, extra money to people to help with these energy prices. Why didn't our government just go along and say, actually, no, you can't trade in our country like that, and you can't put a cap on it? Why not? Because the corporation has got control over the government. So imagine if a corporation is more conscious about its outcomes, its behaviours, and strives for sustainability, that's a huge impact. That's more impact than I can have alone, or you or any other individuals.
Absolutely.
And absolutely some people's journey is activism and changing mindsets, and we need that equally. But if a corporation, as of many of the giant corporations, made, and they are, steps towards sustainability, decided that all leaders were now going to learn to lead with empathy, the impact would be profound.
Yes.
And we're not sacrificing one for the other.
Yeah.
And profit and people can coexist, and we can recycle all of that.
Yeah.
But
and
we're still being stuck on that, the old industrial revolution idea.
Did you just take the words out of my head? I'm literally just going to say that was the industrial revolution model.
Yeah. And it's evolved, and is very much, leadership originally was on the war mentality, win at all costs.
Yeah.
And obviously there's loss involved. Then we went into a more sporting model, which was about competition.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still that I'm better than you and you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Now, win-win.
Yeah.
This is where it's not that I'm going to be better than you and you're going to lose. It's like, actually, how can we collaborate on this? Rather than compete for it, how do we collaborate?
Yes.
How do we make sure that we can sustainably look after people, planet, and profit at the same time?
Yeah.
And yes, we use different language in a corporate environment, but it's fundamentally, it's the same part of evolution.
It's the same thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. So that's the other branch.
Ah, okay. So you saw those as two very separate things, kind of mental health in corporate and the spirituality,
Yeah.
ascension. But they're both parts of you, so they're not entirely separate, are they?
No, they come back to the same thing, which is an evolution and expansion of our consciousness.
Yeah.
The way we think, the way we feel, the way we behave. So whether you're the people within a corporate environment in pursuit of whatever, or the individual in pursuit of whatever, there is no separation.
No.
So we're back to that same thing. We're talking about our conscious evolution as a species and how we think and behave for a greater good, where nobody has to go and fight and nobody has to lose, and we can uplift. And I'm not even talking of the extremes of politics and things like that. It's just sustainability.
Yeah.
Sustainably taking care of the place we live, the people who live here, because it's all that cycle of life, if you want.
Yeah, why not? Why not? And I mean, if leaders, not just in corporate, but within community groups, family groups, any kind of groups, become more spiritually aware and settled within themselves,
Change.
they're going to pass the message on, aren't they, to people that perhaps currently don't have any awareness.
No. And we see this already with the charitable sector. You know?
Okay.
They're making money and going about doing good things for a cause. You know, there's a model there already, but that's seen as charity, and that it's not. And they're unfortunately not a lot of them are sustainable, because again the emphasis is in the other direction.
That's true.
So a lot of charities do struggle for the money.
Yes, they do.
But again, it's like, let's level it up. If you've got a corporation, which many do, that have a foundation or and they can fit, it's sustainable. And that's, for want of a better cliche of the word, but the future is about sustainability, not take.
Yeah.
And that's what's got us to this position.
Yeah.
Somebody winning and a majority of people losing.
Yeah, because a few people want to lead and are not doing it with integrity.
Absolutely.
And good spirit.
Yeah. But the shift is already happening. There are more female leaders than ever. Some countries have appointed leaders very recently. They're their first female leaders. Yeah. And I use female leaders as an example because they are often more heart-centered by the nature of their makeup, shall we say. But we won't go into that too much. No. We know it's a sliding scale, but women demonstrate often more compassion and more heart-centered behaviours because of the maternal instinct, shall we say.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But not always the case, because we've seen female leaders that go exactly with the male blueprint.
Exactly.
And we know also now, again, gender being that spectrum. But this is the powerful individual, one that can be in the masculine and the feminine energy. Yeah. That's where the power lies.
Yeah.
And I just think we're seeing more and more than ever women stepping up. I do think the world would shift if we sacked all the men and the women took over, to be honest.
I think just sticking just with the pure gender at the moment, women just tend to do things differently to men.
Yes.
If you look at your typical stereotypical gender roles, they just tend to handle situations differently. But like you said, it's a complete spectrum. Doesn't mean that every woman and every man does it that way.
Not at all.
And
not at all.
For me, it wouldn't matter in the slightest what gender these leaders were, so long as they were doing things from the heart and with good. And yes, you need to be strong. And yes, there's going to be some really tough decisions that they have to make, and you're going to need the strength. It doesn't have to be masculine strength, it can be feminine strength.
No. And I think this is what the polarity in quantum physics and the spiritual language explains perfectly, because the polarities are seen in spirituality as masculine and feminine. Mm-hmm. Nothing to do with gender.
No.
Masculine being the dynamic doing energy, the feminine being the inert, passive nurturing energy. Positive and negative, if you will. But again, not good or bad, just polarities. One's dynamic, one's passive. And it's that, it doesn't matter what gender one identifies with, it's bringing those two energies into balance. Yeah. Because if you're all up in the masculine, do, then you're not in the heart space nurturing being, and vice versa.
Yeah.
If you're that end of the spectrum, and regardless of what's between somebody's legs, it's irrelevant really, but it's that dance of masculine and feminine energy and what you bring to it. And there are absolutely some, women who are very much in their masculine energy, but they'll experience the same problem as a man that's very much in his masculine energy. Yeah. But when you get somebody, and you know them because you meet them and they're perfectly balanced human beings, they have that contrast. Yeah. That can stand up for themselves, be assertive, be kind and caring, all in one.
Yeah. The whole person. The
whole person. That's the oneness that I talk about really now in our consciousness.
And you is understanding.
This is just the meat suit.
Yeah, that is very true. And that's what you are striving to achieve, isn't it? This oneness.
Absolutely. Bringing it into balance. There's neither right nor wrong, but we can't be one extreme or the other. That's where we get stuck. On one side of the riverbank.
Yeah.
And then rather admit, actually, I've spent too much time over here, I need to go to the other side. We go, oh, well, this must be the right side and that's the wrong one. What are you doing over there?
Yeah. And almost picking a fight.
Exactly that.
With the other side because it's different.
Yeah.
And there we go.
Yeah.
We've come back to where we started, haven't we?
I think so.
I think that's great. What a lovely conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, my darling.
No, always.
I'm dying to know how this all lands, this ascension spirituality schooling that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's going. It's full force now, in both aspects. And again, I asked the universe, I was like, okay, if I'm really, because I was particularly the leadership stuff, I was very like, really? In corporations? I was like, prove it. And I started having conversations with people talking about the changes in leadership and the assistance that they needed. How do we teach our leaders empathy? How do we teach emotional intelligence? And that happened one day. And then the next day I had people that I would say were on the brink of their spiritual awakenings that came through the very next. And I was like, okay. But again, just different languages and bringing it all into unison, I think is really the word.
Yeah. It's exciting, isn't it?
Very.
And fulfilling, I'm certain, for you as well.
Yeah. I think, I feel like I've hit the sweet spot now.
Yes.
Because I get to do all that I love with people that I love and people that help other people to do things that they love. I mean, I can't tell you, and even some organisations I work with, I have friends there, but to do what I love with people I care about, who are helping people to help people and get paid in that equation is, I can literally bring myself to tears when I think of it in that perspective. But it's that, completeness for me. So
I love it.
Very much.
I love it. Thank you for coming and talking.
Oh, thank you for having me. As always.
My pleasure.
Really kind. Thank you.